Alright, what's going on, guys? Vinland Saga, episode 15, After Yule. But before we start the review, I am so close to 300 subs, so if you could help me out, if you're not already subscribed already, let's get there by the end of the week. Let's do this together. Let's get on to the review.
I don't need a choice of voice to judge me. The one and only way I can always see. Anyone.
So this episode begins with a conversation between King Sven and Floki. They're having a conversation about Prince Canute, and Floki is informing King Sven that he used to be under the care of Thorkel, but then he was ambushed and he went missing along with Ragnar, who is Prince Canute's handler. So they think that Prince Canute might be dead at the moment. Now, you may think that's bad news for King Sven, considering that he is the father of Prince Canute. However, we learned some interesting insights on that little dynamic later on in the episode. But before we get there, we then move on to Thorkel. He's sitting in a tavern and he's eating a bunch of food and he's talking about war and how he wants to win. And then one of his men report that they found some Danish soldiers, about 100 to 200. And they're thinking it over. They're like, who could this be? Could it be Thorfinn and Prince Canute? So they basically make the determination that that's the most likely possibility. So they're on the move. They're getting ready to go into battle. We then move on to Prince Canute and Thorfinn. And we finally get some interesting insights on Prince Canute. He's been a very reserved, very introspective character who doesn't really express his emotions or thoughts very often. But in this episode, we finally get to see an outburst from him. He's praying with the priest and Ragnar, and as the priest is talking about Father, the Father of God, Prince Canute has a little bit of an outburst here. He's talking about how a father, you should love your father, and how a father always loves their children. But you can see a lot of anger and vitriol in his emotions and in his face. So you kind of get the idea that Prince Canute's not always being loved by his father, but he feels like that he should be, and maybe he feels like that his father is failing him in that regard. And then after Thorfinn catches a rabbit and he brings it over to Ragnar's little house, they make some soup, and interestingly enough, Prince Canute is making the soup, and we find out that he's actually a very talented cook, and he even made a fish dish for his father, but his father called him a slave, called him a commoner, swiped the food off the table, didn't even try it. So his father doesn't really seem to care for Prince Canute whatsoever. He seems to have more affinity to the older brother, Prince Harold, who seems to be from what we can tell from the various conversations, is a battle-hardened warrior who has earned his stripes in war and has proved himself on the battlefield, whereas Prince Canute is very meek, very reserved and scared, and his talents seem to lie elsewhere. Now, it's interesting, though, because you would think, well, cooking, back in those days, usually, like, the women would do that, but cooking takes a lot of precision and care and patience. Now, if you're a king and you're in negotiations with another country, those are the type of qualities that you want to have, especially if you want to avoid war. So, like it or not, King Sven's best successor is probably his younger son, but he just doesn't see it. And we find out from the conversation between Ragnar and Askeladd at the end of the episode that King Sven actually sent Prince Canute out into the battlefield to be assassinated or killed, because he doesn't want Prince Canute to be the future king of Denmark. He wants his older son, Prince Harold. But it seems like the royal court or the nobility or aristocrats are kind of divided at the moment. Half of them are on the side of Prince Canute, and half are on the side of Prince Harold. So it seems like the king doesn't have much sway over this, But he does have influence in terms of, well, if I can kill the younger son, then he's out of the picture, and then there's only one true successor to the throne. And of course, we find out this information because Askeladd sets up Ragnar and has him killed. And the reason he does this at the end of the episode is that he feels that Prince Canute is weak and he's untrained and unprepared for kingship. So Askeladd wants to take him under his wing, and he wants to groom him into being a strong, capable leader. So this is going to be a really interesting dynamic moving forward. You know, now Askeladd has 2 apprentices under his wing. He still has Thorfinn, who's kind of a begrudging apprentice, but he's still learning from Askeladd nonetheless. And then we have Prince Canute, who may just listen to every word that Askeladd has to offer just out of fear, which may benefit him in the long run. So this is going to be a very interesting dynamic moving forward, and something I'm really looking forward to. And this episode, I feel like it hit it out of the park once again. The early parts with Thorkel, I feel like his characterization is a bit silly. I'm not a big fan of him thus far. He just seems kind of weird and off-putting to me. I'm not saying he's a bad character. I mean, he definitely serves his purpose. But in terms of comparing him to the better characters like Askeladd, he's just kind of a rung below. But the insights on Prince Canute were really fantastic, and we're really developing the world of the dynamics between the countries and the characters and their struggles as people and how they try to overcome them. So, Vinland Saga is such a methodical, slow-burning success, and by far my favorite anime of 2019, and I really can't wait to see what happens in the next episode. Gosh, I keep thinking that it's going to accelerate the pace and we're going to start having these high action-packed battles, but man, they keep the grim, dark, slow pace going, and it's so beautiful, and it's so beautiful in the way that they're carrying it out. It's just absolutely enthralling, and it makes you want to watch the next episode that much more. I feel like each episode is really building on the past successes very well, and the story is just evolving in so many interesting ways. So I think we'll leave it there for now, guys, but until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side, and help me get to 300. All right, later.